Today, let's talk about FTX and what it means for job seekers and for the job market in general within the crypto industry. What's going on, everybody? My name is Rob Payon. I'm the founder of Proof of Talent. We are a recruiting firm that works exclusively within the blockchain, crypto, and Web3 space. As you can imagine, it's been a crazy week and a half with everything that's happened with FTX. And if you're somebody that's been interested in a job in the crypto industry, you might be thinking, what the heck does all of this mean for me? And so we're going to dive into all that and more in today's little bit of discussion. So one of the first things I'll just say is that apologies to anybody who had money in FTX or any of these related entities that were swept up in the contagion associated with it. It is one of, in my opinion, the worst, most egregious just violations of public trust, public funds that I've ever seen in crypto. And I've been now in the space professionally for about 5 years. So it isn't great in that sense. There's not a real positive way to spin that. But today I want to talk more specifically about what it means for job seekers, what it means for that job market. And when we look at that, we're going to look in two different places. So the way I kind of break this down in my head is the psychology of job seekers and companies that are hiring right now, as well as the actual job market itself. So the number of positions that are available, who's hiring, who's not hiring, and how you can think of those things. First of all, the psychology of the job seeker and somebody who's looking at this. If you're a job seeker right now and you're lightly interested in crypto, I could not blame you if you were certainly on the fence or kind of pulling back from that interest with everything that's happened with FTX. When you see the coverage in the media, when you see everything that's happening right now, it doesn't look good on the surface. That said, this was, in my opinion, not crypto industry specific. This was just egregious, horrific, fraudulent behavior by 3 to 5, maybe a few more people. Not exactly sure how deep it runs at FTX and Alameda, but just fraudulent behavior by a small number of people that really, unfortunately, put a just dark cloud over an industry at large. Does this speak to the future of the crypto industry? No, I don't think it does. But when you think about everything that's happened, you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt and look at how certain areas of the industry held up and also what you are interested in. In this scenario with FTX, this was a centralized exchange that had horrific risk management, basically no business practices, no strong business practices, was widely touted, was widely trusted, unfortunately, due to outward appearances. But when you think about how this affects other aspects of the industry and what in many cases makes this world promising, everything else held up as it was supposed to. This was a centralized exchange. Now, when you think about Bitcoin, if you are an avid Bitcoiner, did Bitcoin get affected by this in any way, shape, or form? No. If you are big into Ethereum and DeFi and some of these other layer one blockchains, did Ethereum and a variety of DeFi apps, did they all hold up perfectly fine while the world was crumbling around a centralized exchange? Yeah, they held up perfectly fine. So while this is right now, probably from a psychological perspective, a really scary place to be if you are a job seeker, I think that what you can expect is a somewhat cleansing of the industry in terms of this level of fraudulent behavior, which is obviously a good thing and unfortunate that a lot of people are going to have funds and bankruptcy proceedings for years and years to come. However, the parts of the industry that are the most promising, the most important things that are not centralized exchanges, that are really building game-changing different technology, not just the same technology with a crypto asset spin on the back end, those all held up well. So if you are thinking and trying to determine whether or not this space is for you, I would just say, hey, what is interesting to you? How did that do during this situation? And if you're still having that crisis of faith, that's okay. Again, I don't blame you. It is what it is. Everybody has to make their own choices and think about things in the best way that they possibly can. Now, the psychology for employers is similar in some cases when you're talking about hiring, because if a company was affected by FTX, whether it was treasuries within, or keeping some portion of their treasury within FTX, or money on FTX, or they had an element of funds. Obviously, that's going to be a separate individual occasion or individual circumstance. However, if a company was not affected by FTX, I think it's more just about that psychological effect as to how this is going to affect the industry and where that hiring is going to be. And so far, we have talked and we're working and have been working with the same companies that we've been working with previous to what happened there. And the hiring landscape has really not changed a whole lot, which has been good to see. I think the psychology of most of the people that have been around in this space for quite some time is positive. That is, if they were not affected in some way, shape, or form by FTX. So how is the job market in crypto affected by this? Well, when you think about who is the most negatively impacted by this, you can think about centralized exchanges, centralized lenders, and primarily funds who had their money in crypto on FTX or had some portion of their AUM on FTX, either for trading or for custody or whatever it might have been. So when you think about that, those are likely going to be the places in which you're going to see a reduced amount of hiring and potentially layoffs as well if a company was deeply and severely negatively impacted by what happened with FTX. On the flip side, the companies that have either raised recently, they're more decentral. I don't know if decentralization is the right word, but non-custodial decentralization. The DeFi companies out there, the other competing layer ones, companies in the Bitcoin space that are really unrelated from FTX in any way, shape, or form. Those companies we've seen have continued to keep their foot on the gas and hire because this is in many ways an opportunity for them to continue to grow their team in a, albeit slow and steady manner, but typically continue to grow their team. So to circle back, if you are a job seeker right now, one of the things I think you just want to ask yourself is, has this fundamentally changed the reasons that you were originally interested in the crypto industry? If it has, that's totally fine. But I think for most people, it's not going to fundamentally change the way, or it shouldn't fundamentally change the way that they view the industry. This was an isolated incident of horrific business practices and basically outright fraud. But again, it is isolated. Now, that said, there is, when I say isolated, I mean isolated to 5 to 10 people or whoever it was. It does have knock-on effects. There has been some contagion in the case of it spreading to Genesis Global, which has then spread to Gemini. And we may see additional places as well that are negatively affected by what happened at FTX. But a lot of this really has been almost a delayed and lagged effect from what we already saw happen in the industry back in May 2022, where Luna blew up and you had Celsius and 3 Arrows Capital. This really should have happened in many respects back then. And it's unfortunate that we had to drag this out 6 months. We had to have really $10 billion, it seems, worth of customer funds get caught up in this due to just this horrendous fraud by SBF and company. However, again, it doesn't change the industry as a whole in what we're doing, in what we're building. And if you're like me, you feel that way. If you're not, again, it's okay. So to wrap up, if you were considering a job in the crypto space, are you still interested, or are you running for the hills and running back to whatever job you were working in previously? Would love to hear in the comments, love to hear your thoughts to that below. That would be helpful just to get a feel for perspective on individuals. And outside of that, if you are one of the brave souls that are still interested in opportunities within the crypto space, my company, Proof of Talent, we help job seekers within the industry to find great roles at companies across the space. Average base salary has been $195,000 this year. So some pretty senior level opportunities. And if you happen to be a company that is hiring right now, would love to hear from you. Happy to help out in that journey as well. Thank you so much for your time. Rob Payon, signing out. Have a good one.